Good afternoon and welcome. This is a study of job elements for workers in identified industries. I see in the participants pane that we've got some attendees trickling in, so I just want to welcome everyone, and we'll give it a minute or so to let people settle in and let Zoom process all the attendees that are coming in at this point. See some familiar names in here. Marion Branch, Diane Penland, welcome. Okay, and it looks like we are stabilizing now with our attendees. So I'm going to go ahead and get things started. Once again, welcome. My name's Christy Wake. I'm from the Center for Faculty Excellence, and I'll be facilitating today's paper presentation for you. You've joined a study of job elements for workers in identified industries paper presentation. And before I hand it over to our presenters, I do want to take a moment. I'm sure you guys that have been participating in the research conference today have heard this Zoom housekeeping slide a number of different times, but just in case it's your first one of the day, I'll go through this quickly. So if you need to adjust any audio settings, you can click on the audio settings button in the left lower corner. And we do have everyone on mute as attendees, but you can test your speaker volume and adjust that if you need to. In the lower center area of your screen, you'll see the different engagement options for today. We are encouraging folks to go ahead and use the chat area. If you have questions or comments throughout the session, we'll be monitoring those, but we'll address the bulk of the questions towards the end of the presentation. And if you do click on the chat, you'll notice that you'll see a window that pops open, and you can direct your question or comment just to myself and our presenters as all panelists. Or if you'd like to type in a question or comment that everyone sees, make sure that the option of all panelists and attendees is selected. We do have a live closed captionist with us today, so if you need captions, you just need to click on the closed captions CC button, and you'll see those. And then last thing I'll point out is the view options. If you need to adjust the window size of the Zoom window that displays on your monitor, you can do that by clicking the view options drop down. Okay, so our presenters today, I'm pleased to introduce. We have Dr. Tina Marshall Bradley, who is the academic coordinator in the School of Education and Professional Licensure. And then we also have Dr. George Bradley, also an academic coordinator, but in the School of Management. And I'm going to pass things off to Dr. Tina Marshall to get things started. Tina?
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for that gracious introduction, and I want to thank you and your staff for organizing this conference. It's been a great conference. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. For industries of the future, it is critical to identify those job elements, which are knowledge, skills, and attributes that are important for workers to have so that organizations can thrive. And I have to say that after attending our colleagues' presentation this morning on the effect of a global mindset on the development of leadership and competency, I was really intrigued by the fact that they were looking at leadership and we were looking at workers in the industry. And you'll see towards the end of our presentation where it looks like our findings may dovetail. So that was really exciting. But this study seeks to address the question of what are those job elements and are they similar across industries? We also wanted to know how difficult it is for organizations to find individuals with the job elements that they deem as important. The implications for this study are how institutions of higher education and other training areas respond to these needs. Next slide, please. Experts often describe the times we are currently living in as the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0. Different from previous industrial revolutions, the fourth industrial revolution is the first time that society is witnessing exponential as opposed to linear growth. Some of the questions that are driven by the fourth industrial revolution include, what will be the future of work? How will we define work? How will wealth be shared? And how do we ensure well-being for all? Identified job elements in this study were based on the framework of knowledge, skills, and attributes, which has its roots in the work of government agencies. Some experts feel that this framework is incomplete because of an absence of a uniform definition of skills and attributes. Beyond knowledge and skills that are easy to measure, those attributes that cause individuals to engage are more complex to measure, but nevertheless have been proven to be very important. Next slide, please. For this study, we looked at companies that did work in the fastest growing sectors. Technology and energy seemed to be two of the industries that stood out. These were two sectors that are seen to be industries of the future. For this study, the area of technology included organizations that work in telecommunications, technology, internet, or electronics. For the area we defined as energy, this included organizations that work in utilities, energy, or extraction. The instrument that was used in the study includes the skills of the future. 1, importance. Hiring professionals ranked job elements from 1 to 9, with 1 being not important and 9 being very important on this instrument. The second instrument used was the skills of the future 2, difficulty. On this instrument, hiring professionals were asked to rank each job element from 1 to 9 in terms of difficulty in finding individuals with that element, with 1 being not very difficult to find and 9 being very difficult to find. Next slide, please. From the literature, 24 job elements were included in each of the 2 surveys. Each job element was classified as either a knowledge, a skill, or an attribute based on the KSA framework. And then each knowledge, skill, and attribute was then assigned to a construct. The constructs were higher order, which related to knowledge, technical, which related to skills, and social emotional, which related to attributes. Next slide, please. The population study included hiring managers in organizations in the technology and energy sectors. The rationale for using hiring managers is because they would be the individuals within the organizations who would see the requirements for positions to be filled. They would have an idea of the job elements that seem to be needed the most, and they would also have an idea of how difficult it is to find individuals who possess these job elements. With an effect size of 0.0625, power of 0.08 with 2 groups and 3 dependent variables, the minimum sample size needed was 180 respondents. The sample size we received for this study was 204 respondents for the skills of the future 1, importance, and 211 respondents for the skills of the future 2, difficulty. For both instruments, there were more respondents from technology than from energy. Next slide, please. For this study, we had 2 research questions. The first research question was, is there a significant difference between the perception of human resource managers in specific industries related to professional knowledge, skills, and attributes that are important for workers to have? The second research question was, is there a significant difference between the perception of human resource managers in specific industries related to professional knowledge, skills, and attributes that are difficult to find in workers? A multivariate analysis of variance, or MANOVA, was used to analyze the research questions. In the next part of the presentation, George will present the data from our study. Next slide, please.
Thank you,
George?
Tina.
Sure.
We will take a look at the data analysis of the study. We'll start off with the hypotheses of importance, and you can read that. And let me have the next slide. We'll start off with our descriptive statistics of importance. We have 5 columns there. The first column pertaining to the domains, and then the second column with our sector, our different groups, technology and energy, and we have the mean, standard deviation, and we have the cases. As you can see with the standard deviations, they were pretty standard, no major differences between either group. The mean, you had the higher order, had the larger means, social, emotional with second, and technical skills were the lowest, but these were basically high means for the importance. Next slide. Right here we have results of importance and we rank them. We rank the elements and we have the top 5 for energy and technology, and the element for energy, the first was integrity. And as you can see, it was ranked number 4 with technology, critical thinking number 2, and critical thinking was number 1 for technology. Self-management was 3, and self-management was 2. And as you can see, sense making was number 4 and did not make it into the top 5 in technology. And ability to learn continuous was number 5, and it was number 3 in technology. And adaptability was number 5 in technology, but did not make it into the top 5 with energy. So you can see, as it pertains to rankings, the 2 industries were very similar. Next slide. Okay, the results here. As you can see, in each group of the top 5 attributes was 4 out of 5. And I think something to note here, that knowledge was not in the top 5 in either group. So attributes you could see was the top was 4 out of 5 in technology, and in the industry of energy, it was 4 out of 5 there. Next slide. Right here, we did a basic Pearson correlation, and it was very high between the ranks. No, we did a Spearman. I'm sorry, Spearman. We did a rank correlation here, the Spearman correlation, and with technology and energy, and it was extremely high at 0.9, and it was significant with our 24 elements. Next slide. What we have here is just a scattered plot to give you a pictorial representation of the 0.9, and you can see it's positive and it's pretty straight, and that would represent a 0.9 as a coefficient. Next slide. Now we get into the analysis, our MANOVA, and MANOVA has 4 basic assumptions. One of the assumptions we won't have a slide for, and that is collinearity, multicollinearity. But I can say that all of them were correlated between 0.8 and 0.5, and we did not have any multicollinearity. The slide that we are looking at now, results of assumption, boxes M, and that is a test for the covariance. Test for the covariance, if you go down to the sig, which is the significance, if that number is higher than 0.05, that means it's a met, and it is higher than 0.05. It's 0.329. So that means that all of the covariants are statistically the same, and so that was a met. Next slide. Right here we have Levine's test of variance, and here we have the 3 domains, and we can see at the sig level that each one is greater than 0.05. For each one states that they had the same, statistically the same variance, so we have a met with the Levine's test. Next slide. We have here, we're testing for normality with our variables here. And as you can see, we have 5 columns, the domain, we have industry. So we basically are testing 6 different groups. If you look at the SIG, all are less than 0.05. So these were not met. But we do have some references in the literature. If you have cases over 50, we can waive it, and 44 is pretty close. And so we waive that, although it was a not met for normality. Next slide. Now we have our results of the test between subject effects, and that's basically our MANOVA. We have several columns there. We're going to look at industry, and we're going to look at our dependent variable. Industry is the two groups, technology and energy, and we have our three dependent variables: higher order, socio-emotional, and technical. And as you can see, when you go to the SIG, which is significant, higher order was, there was no significant difference between technology and industry, and there was no significant difference between social, emotional, but there was a statistical significant difference between technology, the industry of technology, and energy as it pertains to technical skills. Next slide. Okay, now we'll move to our second hypothesis that deal with their significant difference between human resource managers and technology and energy company as it relates to the difficulty of finding workers. Next slide. We have our descriptive statistics once again for the difficulty. We have 5 different columns, and as you can see there in the domain column, we have our 3 domains, and in our sectors, we have each domain is broken down into 2 groups, technology and energy. And as you can see, the mean, standard deviation, and the end value. With standard deviation, we can go back there. Yes, standard deviation, they're the same. And as you can see, there's little difference in the means through each one of the domains as it pertains to the industry sectors. Next slide. Okay, let me just note that we did not do a correlation with the difficulty. We didn't have any significant findings there, so we're not reporting those. But now we go to the assumptions, and once again, the assumptions, the one with multicollinearity, that was met. We didn't have any issues there. The assumption with covariance that we have here, that's met because the significant level is above 0.05. Next slide. Once again, when the test for variance, each one of the domains, a significant level is above 0.05. As you can see in the last column with the SIG, it's above 0.05. So the variances were statistically the same, and so that was a met. Next slide. And as you can see here with difficulty, with our results, our test for normality, as you can see in the final column with technology, with higher order and technical skills technology, both were below 0.05, but the sample size was way above 50. So that was a go, and the rest were above 0.05, so that was a met. So we did well there with normality. Next slide. And as you can see, the final results here, the test of between subject effect, we have several columns. We have our source column, which is of our sector, technology and energy, and we have our 3 dependent variables. And if we go to the SIG, none were significant. None were significant. All were above 0.05. So we didn't have any difference as it pertains to the perception of finding difficult people in those domains. None were different between technology and energy, the industries. Next slide. At this time, I will turn it over to Tina, and she will go over the findings of the study.
Thank you so much, George. The central takeaway from the studies essentially is that of this particular aspect of the study is of the top 5 job elements seem to be the most important by professionals in the technology and energy sectors. 4 out of the 5 were attributes and require social emotional acumen. That's why I was saying it was so interesting in terms of the study we saw earlier this morning on the effect of having a global mindset among development leadership competencies. This was not something that we necessarily expected, and as George pointed out, there were no knowledge competencies that were shared among the top area, and only 1 skill competency on each area. Hiring managers in both industries identified 4 of the same job elements as being important. This was something else that was interesting. And those job elements were integrity, critical thinking, ability to learn continuously, and self-management. So this initial study seems to suggest that there is support for promoting the development of social emotional job elements as a part of university and industry training programs, which is consistent with a lot of the literature that is coming out in this area. There's also a need to study other industries of the future to determine if the job elements that they deem to be more important come under the social emotional construct and have the same are identifying the same job elements. Next slide, please. It has been suggested that the focus on the development of hard skills by colleges and universities, while not emphasizing soft skills, has not kept pace with the needs of industry and the broader society. There's a need to motivate people to engage with each other in different ways that require different skill sets. This type of engagement is not only important for jobs of the future, it is also important for the way that individuals communicate, socialize, engage, and participate in civil society. There is support in this study from promoting the development of social emotional job elements into programs of studies created by colleges and universities to prepare individuals for future work. This gives credence to the importance of Walden's mission of social change and the importance of those job elements that are difficult to instill in people and difficult to measure, but are still extremely important. We would like to thank the staff members in the Center for Faculty Excellence, and particularly the Faculty Research Initiative Grant. This study was sponsored by that particular activity, and we look forward to doing similar studies with different industries. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides, next slide, please, just identifies the references that were used in the presentation. For a complete list of references from the study, please feel free to contact either George or I, and we'd be more than happy to share that information with you. Next slide, and we will now take questions, and we will have answers, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tina Bradley and Dr. George Bradley.